Hello and welcome to ICSE Class 10 Computer Applications Programming in Java. We will today be doing the next session. Last time we learned about methods, and we already know that a method is a name given to a block of code used to perform one complete task or subtask. A method is a block of code which only runs when it is called. So that means you need to execute it, otherwise it will not run, it will not do anything at all. You can pass data known as parameters, that is arguments, into a method. Methods are used to perform certain actions, and why do we use methods? It is basically used to reuse the code. That means you define the code once and use it many times. Okay. Today we are going to learn the three ways of writing functions, the things that we did last time. We will be doing with one task, which task is the same, but there are various ways of how to do it. Now let us see three programs. One question says write a function add nums which inputs two numbers, adds them and displays their sum. Okay. Second question says write a function add nums which takes two numbers as arguments, adds them and displays their sum. This is the second question. And the third question says write a function add nums which takes two numbers as arguments, adds them and returns the sum. Now I have highlighted all the important parts of these questions. The first question says you need to input, then you need to add, and then you need to display. That means the result is supposed to be displayed. Now in the first program, where is the data coming from? The data is coming from an input. The input actually comes from a user. So that means you need to use buffered reader or scanner classes to take input from the user. Okay. Then the function is supposed to add numbers, and then the function is supposed to display the result. Now what all things is the function supposed to do? Number one, it is supposed to take input from the user. Number two, it is supposed to add the two numbers. And number three, it is supposed to display the result to the user. Okay. The second question said pass it as an argument. So that means now the responsibility of inputting the numbers is not that of the function or the method now. It is going to get the numbers from somewhere, so it doesn't worry about where the numbers are coming from. So they are going to come as arguments to it. It is then going to add the numbers, and then it is going to display the result. And lastly, we are again going to pass arguments to it. It is going to add, and it is now not going to display, but it is going to return the value. Now please remember, what is the difference between the second and the third question? Is that the result in the second question is displayed inside the function or method itself, but in the last one the method actually returns the value. Okay, now let us go to BlueJ and see how we can work on this. I've already created the structure of the class. That is, we have a main function and we have an add nums function. The add nums function is basically void function. Why? Because it is not returning anything. As we saw in the question, the first question basically said that it is not supposed to return anything, it is supposed to display the result. So we need to display it. I don't need to return. So in the first and second programs, we are not actually going to return anything. So the function is going to be of type void. Okay, let us see now. If it is of type void, we will be using some mode of input from the user. So I will be typing the statements in fast mode now. Okay, the part which is supposed to take input from the user has been written here. I've created a buffer reader class object. The name of the object is br, and I am using br.readLine function to actually take input from the user. Now the input is supposed to be converted into integers, so naturally I'm using integer.parseInt function. Okay, I have also imported java.io package, all the classes from java.io, and I have also written throws IO exception. We don't need to worry about the exceptions at the moment because we'll be doing exceptions later on. But our basic concern here is this function was supposed to take input from the user. Okay, so that means nothing is coming from the outside, everything is being generated from within the function itself. It is performed, the task is performed within the function, and the function displays the result also within the function. So that means no data is coming from outside and no data is going back to where it was supposed to go to. Alright. Alright, now let me create a function called sum, which is equal to m plus n. Okay, and then we can display, let me just copy this part from here. I can just say display the sum is and plus sum. Okay, and instead of the print I will use the println function. Normally before an input I normally use a print because it displays things in the same line. Alright, so my function is complete. Alright, so this is the part of the program which is taking input from the user. The whole work from beginning to the end of the fifth line, it is actually performing the task of inputting from the user. This line is actually doing the processing, which is actually adding the two numbers, and the last line is actually displaying the sum to the user. Okay, is anything coming from the previous function which is actually calling it? No, nothing is coming, so there is no argument there. Is it actually returning anything? No, there is no return statement, so I put a void here. What do you think I should put as the call here? The call is going to be only add nums, the name of the function, bracket open and closed, and a semicolon. That's it. So the main function, what it is doing is it is only calling the function. Alright, is it passing anything to the add nums function? No, it was not supposed to, because add nums function was supposed to take input from the user. Okay, no, it is not supposed to get it from anywhere. Alright, next, add nums function, what was it supposed to do? It was supposed to add the two numbers, so we have added the two numbers. Okay, alright, and last is system.out.println print sum. So the sum was supposed to be displayed here. Now because we are actually executing a function which contains a bufferedReader class, input from the bufferedReader class, we need to put throws IO exception there also. Okay, now the function is complete. Let us see how it works. So let us see now. Let me compile it, let me close it, let's go to BlueJ and execute the function. It says please enter the two numbers. I say 10 and 20 are the two numbers. It says the sum is 30. So our work is done. The work was to input two numbers, to add them, and to display the sum. Okay, this is done. Alright, let us see now how do we do the second question now. The second question was to take the values as arguments, then to add them and to display them. Now please remember, these two statements are going to remain the same now, to add them and display them. So are we supposed to take input from the user? I don't think so. So what do? We remove these from here and we take them to the main function, because now the main function would naturally be passing it values and naturally it will need to take input from the user. So the function itself is not taking input, so we don't need to worry. Alright, let us see now. I don't need throws IO exception here. Why? Because I am not actually taking any input. Now the input is being taken in the main function, so naturally I will be passing m and n to the function which is being called, and naturally if I'm passing two arguments from there, actual arguments from there, I will be receiving them into formal arguments. Okay, so we know that m and n here are actual arguments, m and n here are formal arguments. Now the function is done. Only thing is, we have now taken input using the main function. Main function calls addnums, and whatever input was taken here in these two lines is being passed to the addnums function, which is received by variables of the same names. Now what we need to learn here is the actual arguments may or may not have the same name as formal arguments. So it doesn't actually matter whether I use the same variables as formal arguments and the same variables as actual arguments. It doesn't really matter. What matters is their positions. Okay, the first value goes to the first argument and the second value goes to the second argument. Now this program is going to perform the task in exactly the same way now. Let's see how it works. Let me run it. Now it is taking input from the user, 10 and 20. Now which of the two functions is actually taking input? It is basically the main function which is taking input from the user. And when we press enter here, the display, the sum is 30. Now what is being done in the addnums function now? Addnums function is basically now only adding the two numbers and displaying the result. Alright, so this takes care of the second program which said that we need to take arguments and we need to add and we need to display. Okay, let's learn how to do the third part. The third part said take arguments, add them and return the result. Now what is the result here, by the way? The result is the value sum. Instead of displaying system.out.println sum, we remove it from here, and over here we say return sum. So that means now this function is not actually displaying sum, it is actually returning the value to the previous function. And in the previous function we will take a variable, say s, and this call is now going to change s is equal to so and so. Okay, now please remember I am returning sum from this function, from this method. If it is returning sum, the sum is of type int. What should I change here? I should make it, you're right, it should be int. So my functions are complete now. It was showing some errors, now the errors are okay, they are fine. And now I can display the value of sum here now. The function has become very small, main function has become bigger and bigger, but our work is done. Okay, now what we have done is the main function is taking input from the user, it is calling addnums, the input that is taken here is being passed to addnums function, which is passed to m and n. What does this function do? This function will add the two numbers, store it in a variable called sum, and it will return the value of sum, which will be stored in s. Okay, now please remember the previous program did not have s is equal to something. Why was it not having something like this? Is because we were not expecting addnums function to return anything, because it was a void function. Now as we are expecting addnums function to return something, we write s is equal to so and so. Okay, so that means whatever it is returning, it is returning an int, and that int is going to be returned into a variable called s, and we display the value of s. Okay, let me first compile this, close this, run this. Okay, so when you run this, let me put 10 and 20 again. 20, it displays the sum is 30. Now you can see the display is exactly the same. What you know is that behind the scenes the things are working differently. How differently you have seen. The first function, main function, did not do anything. It said, okay addnums, you start doing the work. And addnums was supposed to do everything. It was supposed to input the numbers, it was supposed to add the numbers, it was supposed to display the numbers. In the second question, it was a little different. Now the responsibility of taking the input, that is getting the values for the variables m and n, was now the responsibility of the main function. Okay, main function said, okay, I will take the two numbers as input. Now I am passing them to you, you add them and display them. This was the second question. And the third question said, okay, I am inputting to two numbers. Addnums, please take these two values and return the sum to me. I don't want you to display, I am going to display it. I am in charge. It's basically saying this. I am in charge. I will do whatever I need to do with S, with the sum. Okay, so please, you are supposed to just simply add the two numbers and give me the result. So what does it do? Add numbers does the same. It simply adds the two numbers and returns the sum to the main function, and the main function does whatever it needs to do with S. It basically displays it. Okay, now some teeny weeny bits that we need to work on. I want to change this sum variable S to sum. Is this going to be a problem? As we already have a variable called sum in the other function, can we have the sum function here? The program is not displaying any errors, so that naturally the thing must be that it is okay. Yes, it is okay. The variables m and n and sum are local variables of the main function. So they belong to the main function. They don't belong outside the main function. So that means there is no problem if I create it in some other method. So in addnums method we also have m and n, we also have sum. So it doesn't really matter whether we have this variable with the same name in some other method. It should not confuse you, that's all. You could use different variable names, so there should be no confusion, but there is no problem in creating variables with the same names in other functions. Okay. That is all for today. For the next session, I will be preparing something on method overloading. Okay, so we will in the next class learn what method overloading means, and in the meanwhile I'll also be giving you some assignments, and those assignment questions you need to do. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the session. I enjoyed. Let's meet in the next session.